Hey there, YouTube. Welcome to Monday's edition of The Breakfast Club. I'm Got That Funk, and I want to thank you for joining me. As you can see from the title of this video, this week on The Breakfast Club, we're all going to be discussing drugs. And specifically in this video, I'm going to be addressing why I think recreational drugs should be legally available. But I don't want to limit the conversation to that, although I do want everyone to touch on that. But the topic is pretty big, really. Because you've got your illegal drugs and your legal drugs. There's that comparison. You've also got the fact that if drugs were legal, there would be a certain set of benefits to society and a certain set of adverse effects for society, and you have to weigh those up and so forth. Also, some people will have direct experience of drugs, and some people will have significant others or family members who've had drug problems. And I would like to include all that kind of thing in the discussion. I don't think we have to limit the discussion to whether or not drugs should be legal. And before I get into my own little discourse on why I think recreational drugs should be legal, I want to say straight up that this video and the conversation that I'm initiating with it is not meant to imply in any way that I'm advocating the use of recreational drugs. What I'm doing is advocating that recreational drug use should be legal. Okay, it's not quite the same thing. It's my opinion that if you've never done drugs, you're almost certainly better off never doing them. And I would go further and say that, doing drugs does not make you big or clever or cool, But some people will choose to do them. And some people will enjoy doing them and be able to do so relatively responsibly, in the sense that it doesn't adversely affect their life in any way that makes them unhappy. So, but like I say, before I get off on that, I want to encourage other Breakfast Clubbers to broaden the conversation beyond just whether or not recreational drugs should be legal. Okay, I have talked about this before, but that was back when I had like 100 subscribers on my main channel. But one reason I personally think that recreational drugs ought to be legal is because it's kind of human nature to want to alter your consciousness. If you look all the way back through recorded history, and in almost every culture on earth, people have sought to alter their state of consciousness artificially in one way or another. Whatever natural substances have been around, they've figured out a way to get high on it. If drunk is definitely high, but we don't have to necessarily diverse the conversation in that direction. But anyway, my point is that people have sought to alter their state of consciousness throughout history. It seems to be part of human nature, and to make the pursuit of that human nature illegal just seems preposterous to me, frankly. Why would we make laws that go against our own nature? That doesn't make any sense. So there's that. My other secondary reason for believing that all recreational drugs should be legally available is because, we should be free to decide for ourselves what we do or don't put in our bodies. To me, it's a fundamentally basic right that you should be, to the largest possible degree, sovereign over your own body. And I would qualify that by saying, as long as you're not using that sovereignty to adverse effects on other people. And we could have an argument about whether or not drugs do that. It's my personal opinion that for some people, drugs are hazardous and it can ruin their lives. It's my opinion that the majority of people who do recreational drugs don't do them all the time, except for pot smokers. And it's my impression that a lot of people can function in their daily lives and get on with their jobs and pay their bills and get high on the weekend, or get high when they go to a party or whatever, And when I say get high, I'm talking about using any kind of recreational substance for drugs, whether it's smoking pot or a line of ketamine or MDMA or something like that. Now, the third reason that I think recreational drugs should be legal is because, quite frankly, if you can't even keep drugs out of prison, you certainly can't keep them out of society. And by making them illegal, you create a humongous criminal underclass. In the United States, I I think it was 2010 was the figures I read, and I can't remember where I read them, so I don't think I know where the link is, but I might try to find it. But in 2010, they estimated that the 4 drugs, marijuana, meth, cocaine, and heroin, accounted for a black market trade in the U.S. of $100 billion annually. And that's only 4 drugs. There's plenty more drugs than that out there being sold on the black market. $100 billion. No taxes, for one thing. That's one issue. But also the crime that enables, necessitates, in order to have the black market function, is going to have to generate an awful lot of money to make it worth the risk, because it is illegal. And, we have way too many people incarcerated for simply wanting to alter their consciousness, which to me is perfectly natural to want to do. And if you come across something, if it happens to be illegal, but it, agrees with you, if it pleases your senses and doesn't ruin your life, why shouldn't you be able to pursue that? And enjoy it like you would, bergamot tea or whatever. I don't understand why altering your state of consciousness has to be treated with such a taboo. And I certainly don't think that recreational drugs should be illegal for everybody. Now, that's my main 3 points. I want to say that if recreational drugs were to be legalized, there would have to be an awful lot of knock-on effects in society, and we'd have to prepare for those. It's well rehearsed in places like Portugal and the Netherlands that they focus on treatment for people who develop problems and education, and I think those are basically fundamental to this conversation. You couldn't legalize drugs without that. I would also go so far as to say that some drugs, if they were made legal, you shouldn't just be able to buy them over the counter at a head shop or whatever, or a liquor store or something like that. I think some of them you should have to go to the doctor and get a prescription for, and you should have a quota on certain drugs, because certain drugs are, quite frankly, chemically addictive. And if you do, it's all mathematics and biology, man. If you do more than X, you will become an addict. So I think we could control it. That form of regulation I don't think would be too difficult to administer. And I think there are certain drugs, and we could have an argument about which ones should go on that list as opposed to the ones that you could go into a head shop and buy. From my point of view, it's really difficult. You probably should have to get some kind of medical evaluation as to what would or wouldn't necessarily be extremely detrimental for you personally. But because I think we are all different in our tolerances. Some people get drunk on 1 glass of wine, and some people can drink a whole bottle and it barely touches the sides. And it's the same with recreational drugs. Some people, a veteran pot smoker, for example, will have a pretty high tolerance for THC as compared to someone who's never smoked pot before. So yeah, it's not open and shut, black and white. There's an awful lot of details to work out. But distribution would have to be for adults only. That would be something I would definitely insist on. And what drugs are the recreational drugs that I'm including in my evaluation? And what do I call recreational drugs, I suppose, is a valid question that I should answer. Well, inclusive of nicotine and alcohol, which are already legal, and caffeine, I would say, amphetamines, there are many different kinds of amphetamines, but there should be legally available amphetamines on some level that they could work that out. The safety, quality control and all that would have to be relevant to how it was made legal. But amphetamines in general, because a lot of people just like that little extra bit of pep. It's a fact. Anybody who likes coffee understands that. And a little bit more zing than that is just what agrees with some people. Doesn't agree with me. I'm not one of these people who likes peppy drugs. My thing is psychedelics, or has been. But I'll get off on that in a minute. So yeah, back to that. Amphetamines, some barbiturates, some are very addictive, and you got to be really careful with that. But something like ketamine, for example, I'm not well enough educated on the medical long-term effects of ketamine use. So I don't really have much of an opinion about it, but other than to say that I would put it on the list of things that we should explore as to whether or not they should be made legally available recreationally. Then you've got MDMA, you've got things like mushrooms and peyote, mescaline, acid, DMT. All of those are psychedelics. I think salvia is still legal in most places. There's plenty of psychedelics out there, and psychedelics aren't necessarily good for everyone. For example, sometimes they use psychedelics to heal people with certain mental conditions, and sometimes they cause certain mental conditions, or seem to. So I think the jury's a bit out as to whether or not you should make those openly available over the counter without some sort of permission slip or something from your doctor first. That it won't, that you're not prone to psychosis or anything like that. So that's my opinion about that. Cocaine, I think, has such an established market that it would just make sense to make that legal. How it would be distributed would be open to debate as far as I'm concerned. What else? Heroin, meth. Again, it's all about how you treat it, how you make it legal as to whether or not it's wise to do it, in my opinion. But whatever there's a market for, there's going to be a demand for, and if it's not legally available, it will be made available illegally. We have seen that. The drug war has completely failed. It has created a huge criminal underclass, which adversely affects our society on a number of levels. And, it's, in my opinion, another reason that drugs should be made legal is because by making them illegal, we give the authorities way too much power over us. And it's not just the principle that you should be sovereign over your own body. I mean, if you get stopped, all the cops have to do to search you is go, I think I smell pot, and if they search you and don't find any, there's not going to be any adverse consequences for them. And if they search you and find something, then you're in for it, even if it's not what they're looking for. So, I think if they were legal, it would have more beneficial effects than adverse effects. That's my personal opinion. If you think I'm wrong, talk me out of it. If you think I'm right on some level, but not all, let me know down in the comment section. And I'm sorry, this is the longest video I've ever made for this Breakfast Club channel, and hopefully we'll all have a good conversation. Thanks for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing what everyone else has to say. JJ Talks is up next. Until next time, may all your ups and downs be ups.